Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for this fantastic opportunity. I think we have a bit of a challenge ahead of us. We'll try to be as effective as possible. I would like to thank mostly, before, of course, introducing you, my esteemed panelists, both live with me and connected virtually. I would also like to thank everybody that is connected digitally watching us this morning from beautiful sunny Evora World for Travel, right? And I think it's very interesting that we are now been asked to sort of, rethink of a possible new business model for travel. So I'm Alessandra Priante, as was already anticipated. I'm the director of the region of Europe at UNWTO, which is the United Nations agency responsible for global tourism, and specifically sustainable, universally accessible, and responsible tourism. And I'm hereby joined by an incredible list of panelists. And some of them are connected virtually with us. And I hope I will be able to manage you all very well. Good morning, first of all. And I'm going to now introduce you very briefly, and will definitely leave you more space to talk about also yourself during the discussion. We have with us Professor Hal Vogel, who's an author, a professor of travel economics at Columbia University, and mainly he's the founder of Vogel Capital. Good morning, Hal. What time is it over there?
Hello, world of travel. We're all time travelers through space and time.
Great. So where are we talking to you? What time is it over there? Oh, God. So it must be very early.
Yes, the sun has just started to rise on the horizon.
Okay, that's good. That brings a lot of good luck, obviously, to us. Then we have Robert Mandelbaum, Hotel Advisor Service, CBRE. Hi, Bob.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone.
Good morning. Good
Atlanta,
morning.
Georgia.
Good morning. Thank you very much. And Jeremy Sampson, who's the CEO of the Travel Foundation. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, everyone. Greetings from Bristol in the UK.
Right, great. So you're not really, the sun has risen already in Bristol, I'm sure about it.
Well, I'm in the UK, so.
So you don't really see the sun. Well, that's great. Then we have also a dear friend, and I'm really happy to see him again and to have the pleasure of moderating him, Michel Durrieu, who at the moment is the CEO of Huttopia, but he's also a special advisor to the UNWTO Secretary General. And he's also a book author, by the way, which is, I had the pleasure of reading some time ago, really very interesting piece. So thank you very much, Michel, for being with us. And you're in France, yeah?
Yeah, hello, Alessandra. I'm in Bordeaux, so in France, and with a glass of wine. No, it's a joke. But very happy to be here all together.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us. And obviously, I have my very two brave panelists here that have joined me live in beautiful Evora. And I am talking about Lionel Flasseur, who's the president, founder of Essentium Fund for Benevolent Tourism. I have to confess, when I read this title, I'm like, benevolent tourism. I really like this definition. Thank you very much, Lionel, for being with us. And we have our dear friend, Juan Gomez from Forward Keys. He's an insight expert, and some of you might know, actually, Forward Keys is also a very nice data partner for the UNWTO. So after this brief introduction, let's get to business. And because we want to get to business and we want to be efficient and effective, they've given us, I would say, I don't know if all of you agree, both virtually and presentially, they've given us kind of an interestingly big task, because when we talk about business models, we talk about a lot of elements. And so what I will try to do also, and feel free to really to bring in your personal view and your personal experience into this. What I would like to do, I would like to bring in the elements of how you design a business model. Because I think that by refocusing on the elements, we will understand if we are at the right time to design a new business model, to update the existing one, to cancel the existing one, or to simply say, no, we're not ready yet because we don't have enough elements. Obviously, when it comes to a business model, we all know there's costs and revenue. So the business model obviously, implies also a good and interesting financial aspects. There's a focus on key resources, partners, key activities, and relations with the clients, targeting, segmenting, obviously channels of reaching clients, but mainly I would like to start with one key element that we should all start understanding here. Value. It's the value creation, it's the value proposition. Now, given the fact that we're discussing about sustainability and the importance of sustainability, and the fact that we've heard many things, I think, and especially yesterday, about like everybody saying sustainability we cannot do without. Human resources, we have an issue. How do we actually implement and make this very, very real beyond the words that we normally put together next to a strategic plan of a destination? So I would like to start with a little round with all of you regarding the value proposition. And if I may, I would like to start with Lionel, because Lionel had put forward when we were pre-discussing a very interesting analysis of what you think is the way to calculate added value. So tell me a little bit about this, and tell me a little bit about how you see now our approach to defining a value proposition for a business model, given the times and given the COVID situation.
Thank you. So very quickly, so I have two hats. The first is to be president of the new foundation, and the other one is to be in charge of the promotion of my region in France, second one, 21 billion euro each year. And this is with this role that we define a new vision 3 years ago about sustainable and inclusive tourism. This is our vision 3 years ago. That's the reason why during this today we speak a lot about that, but since 3 years we have launched a lot of things. And especially we have redefined what is our new business model for destination. And that's right, that added value is not just a question of financial indicators such as profit, margin of profitability. And so we have included a new indicator in our destination. Before, 3 years ago, we only have 5 financial indicators to present our destination. And now we have more than 20 new indicators. And we include, for example, the value added to the environment, how we in terms of human terms also, for instance, in respect of the people receiving visitors to their area, but also our colleague. What is the new value with our colleague and collaborator? And that's the reason why, for us, it's a new model economic, the way how to promote our destination.
Well, you said something very interesting about profitability, and I would like to, I think we all agree that here the parameters need to have a drastic change. So I would really like to ask specifically to Bob, if you allow me, and apologies for calling you Bob directly, as if we've been friends forever. So you've been doing a fair amount of research around sustainability for developers and for property owners. So is it profitable to be sustainable?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you to Lori and World of Travel for the opportunity to speak, and thank you, Alessandra. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you perfectly.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. So there's definitely payback for good sustainability and ESG procedures. First, the thing that comes to mind are the operational savings when you operate a hotel, and the first thing that comes to mind is utility costs. At a typical hotel, 4% of your expenses are on things like water, electricity, waste. And I've read surveys where you can, with proper sustainable practices, the right equipment, furnitures and fixtures, you can save up to 20% Take the average hotel here in the U.S. for which we survey, that could represent an additional, $80,000 to $100,000 in profits, which increases the value of your property, and roughly speaking, $800,000 to $1 million U.S. So there's definitely some direct operational savings. Other ways hotels are acting as sustainable are the products and services that they buy. Replacing plastic cups with and straws with reusable materials. Purchasing sustainable foods. So there's a lot of ways on the development side. As an owner of a facility, building a facility, there's definitely funds out there that seek ESG guided development costs. And in general, if an ESG development is considered to be less risky, therefore there's usually preferable financing terms for that. And if you build sustainable and add sustainable materials in your construction, that enables some of those operational costs, operational savings that we talked about earlier. So there's definitely some monetary value to following sustainable practices.
Well, thanks a lot. Obviously, time is involved because the way that probably the timeline when you introduce sustainability efforts changes a little bit. So you mentioned directly, hospitality. We have Michel Durrieu here. Michel is the CEO of Huttopia. Huttopia is a very interesting company, I would say. So Michel, how would you relate to that? Because can you tell us a little bit more about what Huttopia has actually put in place specifically in terms of maybe answering this question that probably is a positive answer. So sustainability is profitable, right?
Yes, I can say that Huttopia, just to remember that Huttopia is a French company created 21 years ago. So it's not a new company just because we have a sustainable tourism model. Is one of the world reference for sustainable tourism in nature camping. So we are really in sustainable tourism. Our business is growing through our investment. We have a real economic model, so we are not asking for subsidies and we are not looking for other investment. We research lands, we design our sites, we also manufacture our tents and chalets, and we then manage the sites. And more than 95% of our bookings are made directly. So as you can see, we have all the process from the design, the investment, and the bookings. And after 21 years of this model, we are creating sites now. We have 70 sites on 3 continents and 6 countries. And we will open in the next 3 years, I will say, more than the double of the sites. So it's a real growth. We are able to go in the nature because we are meeting a lot of people, tourism stakeholders, landowners, politicians, institutions, and we are presenting a real sustainable tourism with an environment model and concept, but at the same time, we are making a real development, territorial development, creating jobs. Each site is more or less in between 20 and 30 employees, investing in territories where usually people do not invest and where we do not have a high density of tourism. So I think that it's a real model of what we can do. And in the time being, we have lots of countries who are coming to ask us to develop Huttopia in natural park and reserves and natural places.
Thank you. Actually, yeah, Huttopia, you actually mentioned quite a very interesting point that I will definitely try to come back in our second round of question regarding human resources, definitely, and developing what we, for example, call the most, remote or rural areas, that's for sure. But then now I think, Hal, I mean, we didn't plan it, but as usual, panels are beautiful because of this. It seems like the ball has been thrown definitely in your court. So Vogel Capital Investments.
Sure.
And going back a little bit, linking to what Michel was saying, going back to the idea of value. Now, the value for the investors with the sustainable component, how much did it change the perspective? If it did change the perspective, and how do you actually, you know, what kind of, what's your input here? What does Vogel Capital actually say to its partners and investors?
The main model that I think helped start this type of thought process for the panel is productivity enhancement. It always has been, it always will be. In the travel and tourism business, the main factors have always been and will always be time and density. So value to the investor is how can you improve the productivity, the efficiency of the operation. And typically what that has been, and historically, what that has been is to increase the density of usage. So in a restaurant or in a airline, for example, you know that they were trying to cram more seats into each flight, and the number of seats was increasing, but the size of the seats was decreasing. And I'll use just an extreme example. A few years ago, Ryanair floated the proposition that, well, for a 30-minute flight, what do you even need a seat? We can hang a strap
Yes.
standing up. We'll have just a board for everybody to lean on. And that's how we're going to double the number of people in each plane. The size of the hotel room shrinks. In a restaurant, you want to have as many tables as possible per square foot. And and the time element is you want to turn things around as fast as possible. So if you're in a restaurant, you want to, as they say, turn the tables. If you're fast food, it's like 2 minutes. If you're efficient, if you're a fine dining house, it might be 3 hours. So you pay for that kind of extra time. In terms of time for airlines, you try to turn the plane around as fast as possible when it's on the ground. And then when you fly, you try to fly as many hours, use the equipment as many hours as possible. So in the pandemic phase, that was all turned around a bit. It was upside down. It is going to come back again. We're going to figure that out. But value for the investor is trying to adjust to these things. The main thing for investors and for consumers and the business people who run these operations is convenience, efficiency, and safety. With a change in safety, requiring changes in the cost structure. So in the past, people in most of these hotel and airline and tourism operations didn't really care all that much about disinfecting the planes or having a change of air quality and so on. That's going to change the cost structure. The cost structure now will be more emphasis on the perfunctory stuff, namely technology applied to forecasting, to deciding how many people you can replace with a robot. All of those kinds of things change the structure, but the value proposition for the investor still goes back to how efficiency, just the difference in costs.
Well, thanks a lot.
Alessandra, if you let me add something.
Yes, please,
what Hal
Michel.
said, because
Please, Michel.
it's very interesting because with this look of optimizing, the example of Huttopia is once again something interesting. We are looking for land with many hectares, In the States, for example, we are looking for lands with more than 25 hectares and a lot, much more than 50. We are not increasing the number of accommodation and customers on site. So really a big value of the model is to have much more space and an access, a direct access with the nature with less tourism. The only thing is if we are looking on this model, you have an impact on the price. And the risk is part of that. If you are not optimizing on the volume of the people you are receiving, the risk is the increase of the price and to make a luxury tourism. So it was just that, because we do not have to speak about only in terms of optimization. It's the impact on the price, and less people are able to go on those products.
Well, thank you very much, Michel, for the remark. Thank you, Hal. Actually, you wanted to comment on what Michel said?
Just a very quick comment. I don't want to take the time. The change in the model also involves fees. So the airline business led the way with baggage fees, with change of ticket fees, and so on, a la carte fees. And there are indications that the model will change in hotels and other areas to an a la carte business over the next few years, and that's creeping into the hotel business, I believe.
Well, absolutely. These are old tendencies, and this is why probably, you know, when thinking about designing a business model for the travel and tourism, it's, I think that now the challenges that we have ahead is what you mentioned before, Hal, is the, let's say, uncertainty. We don't really know what's going on. And I think the uncertainty, in a way, is the most disruptive element in the design of a business model, because you are normally supposed to have some kind of a timeline as a point of reference, and especially for tourism, you're supposed to program in advance. So in theory, right now, we should be speaking about 2025, 2026, if not 2030 for real, just, you know, beyond the objectives. In fact, we are hardly speaking about what's going to happen next month. And probably this is also another, let's say, disruptive element that we should take into consideration. But definitely, yes, Michel, price, it is indeed something that we need to put into the equation. Also, when we're introducing different types of investment, especially because, as Hal mentioned, we've all seen that obviously what was relevant in 2019, shrinking the seats, shrinking the size of the hotel rooms, is not necessarily relevant now. Actually, quite the opposite, where we're, for example, not in airlines, not on planes, but we're asked to leave a seat empty between, you know, us and somebody else. So, which means more space, more distance. So somehow, you know, all these elements need to be taken into consideration. Are we going to consider them temporary? Are we going to consider them, like somebody says, the new normal? And if we do that, how does that actually impact the business model? But going back to something that was mentioned initially, indicators. We're talking price here. We're talking costs. We're talking timelines. When we're building indicators, we need data. And so I would like to ask you, Júan, what are the data that you're actually considering now as more relevant to actually build new indicators, whether it's for a value proposition, whether it's for, you know, analyzing or reporting on, for example, how the industry is going?
Yeah, well, I think you were saying something, you know, very relevant, and is the fact that, you know, looking at the past is not, you know, as relevant as it used to be before. Like, you know, you would plan your season just by looking at last year's, and then, you know, adapt to whatever you saw back then. But now, as you said, we don't even know what's going to happen next month. So how can airlines, I mean, ForwardKeys tracks airline travel data across the globe, and you know, all our customers, they find very difficult to plan, from, you know, marketing plans to, attracting the right customers and just plan, generally speaking. So now we're basing all our models on forward-looking data, and that is what is happening on real time, and analyzing what impact it's going to have in 1 week, 1 month, 2 months time. So that is why we check millions of air travel bookings on a daily basis. And the market is super reactive. We were talking also about the density, density in this whole model. Well, the density is not quite there. We've had a big readjustment. I mean, if we look past, the summer, we only had, Europe, which quite reactivated a little bit, but it still had, 60% less travelers than, international travelers than in 2019. And this is expected to, be the same for the next months to come. So, but the good thing is, like, with this forward-looking data and with real-time data, you can track the sentiment of the market. So you can grasp what is the, the willingness of people to travel, and also the impact that all these decisions in, like, the governments are taking, and not allowing passengers or travelers to plan, is having an impact in the in the market. So every time we've seen a new travel bubble being announced or travel restrictions being eased, we've seen huge spikes of bookings, and that's obviously having an impact on all the planning and all those models to anticipate to the future. But yeah, definitely. I mean, people. I mean, there's demand. There's a frustrated demand there. There's pent up. There's a lot of it, but people cannot travel. It's not easy to travel now. So obviously, what we also need to bear in mind is that we all need to work collectively to. I mean, COVID is a perfect chance to change the model that we're talking, right, or to adapt. But of course, we all need to be together, and we need to be conscious about all the impact that very little actions can have. So by having a minister announcing that destinations such as Spain is not safe, that has a huge impact in what travelers' behavior. So
indeed,
it needs to be considered.
Indeed, definitely. And trust has been probably one of the biggest issues at the moment, because people have definitely lost trust a little bit in the whole traveling experience at the end of the day. I mean, even though we desire it very much, we're much more cautious, obviously. Now, going back to, so you basically said, I want to pick up on something that you put forward. You said that COVID-19 is definitely a chance. Now, of course, we don't know. I mean, we don't know really when what happens if somebody says, okay, all travel restrictions lifted, we finally found the agreement, we're recognizing each other's vaccine, everybody travels. So what's going to happen is people are just going to jump and go, or are they going to wait? I believe we don't really know that, right? Even though you're testing the sentiment every day.
Yeah, and and the market is very reactive. But again, we don't know what would happen if all the restrictions were,
So Jeremy, from the Travel Foundation perspective, I mean, is this the right time to design a new business model? As Juan said, COVID-19 gives us the possibility to study, redesign, think, or what is it that we should really focus on? Because if we miss it now, it's going to be a disaster. I mean, you and Travel Foundation, please tell us a bit more about what you do, because it's really important.
Yeah, thanks, Alessandra. I've been listening to this conversation with real interest, and I think that I want to pick up on a point that you made. I mean, first of all, just to answer your question, I think this is the moment. And building off a point that you made, there are perhaps new perspectives, new considerations in creating a model that I think are becoming sort of increasingly impossible to ignore. The perspective that I think is most important for us to consider right now is that our host communities, our destinations around the world, have really been through quite a lot in the last several years, starting with the sort of exponential growth, of course, in the pre-COVID times, which were creating a lot of pressure on communities, and now this period of time which has seen sudden and unexpected shifts on cities which have suddenly suffered from a collapse of the tourism sector to protected areas, national parks, rural areas that have been swamped with visitors, and this very quick change doesn't allow for proper planning and proper ability to ends up putting everyone in a sort of reactive situation. But I think the X factor here is that communities are increasingly no longer willing to sit aside from this conversation. I heard a quote that I really loved recently, and it basically said that it's not that we need to bring communities to the table, communities are the table. And I think this is really important when we take into consideration this idea of the word value. Oftentimes in the space that we work in, there's been this big discussion about moving from volume to value. And I think this concept the sentiment is a really nice one. Let's focus on more value. But I also think this concept it sort of lacks nuance in many ways. And I'll try to explain what I mean. I think it's really easy maybe to say, okay, there's some basic math. Maybe perhaps to deal with over-tourism, we reduce the number of visitors, but we get those who come to spend more money. So we build, I don't know, golf courses, 5-star hotels, big spenders, etc. But the problem here is that the sense of value, particularly when you start to ask the community, really lacks nuance. And we need to ask ourselves questions like value for whom? Who is actually deriving value from such a model? What is value? What does value actually mean? And are we seeing the whole picture? So I have a proposal actually for how we might look at value, particularly taking a community perspective and perhaps a more holistic perspective of the key drivers. Here I would say that high value tourism really best delivers the benefits that are desired by destination and its communities while minimizing the costs that are incurred. And this is something we don't look at often enough, are the particular costs that the travel and tourism sector is responsible for, and who indeed is responsible for those. Even on the benefits side, I think it goes beyond focusing primarily on simple revenue generation, but really looking at employment and other economic indicators to consider broader impacts like where is revenue flowing across the value chain, what type of employment is being created and for whom, and what are the potential social costs to residents or impacts on natural and cultural landscapes that put the communities and the resources that the industry depends on at risk. So, and the last thing I'll comment on this is that I think there are really key societal drivers that are starting to have a significant impact on not only our industry, but certainly if our industry starts to ignore things like the climate crisis, the global call for more equity, diversity, and inclusion, I think we do so at our peril. And I think that's not only communities at the table raising their hands, but increasing evidence that travelers are concerned about these issues. Generation Z, for example, particularly demonstrating sentiment around the desire for more responsible behavior and choices, and concern about the future of the planet. So I don't think we can ignore such drivers in thinking about value and describing value or creating a new business model for the industry, which I think that we have to adapt and evolve, and this situation has created the moment for that to occur.
Thank you, Jeremy, actually, for giving this up. You guys are not seeing it, but someone just showed me the 5 minutes. Given the fact that my predecessor took 5 minutes more, I'm actually going to take those 5 minutes plus 5 minutes because I have such an interesting and beautiful panelist with me. And yes, I thank you for that, Jeremy, because I was actually going to ask you, Lionel, immediately, is that what you mean by benevolent tourism? Looking at communities, social inclusion, social sustainability. May I say, Jeremy, that this would be the social side of sustainability, right? Which comprises everything. And if I may jump into this, Lionel, what would you say?
Yeah, perhaps it's paradoxal, but philanthropy perhaps is a new way to do business. And this is the new value you can bring to the consumer. Because the difficulties is to have, when we invest, is to have a long-term view, but marketing expectation evaluate very, very quickly. And for example, I have some figures. Very recent studies show that 43% of young people say they have already changed their way of traveling to minimize their impact on the environment. And 26% say that they are ready to pay more to invest for service to take climate change into consideration. So the new value is also a question of sense, a new sense. So, and we have to bring sense to our business, to our sector, and philanthropy could be the new sense and one kind of the new business model.
Definitely. Michel, would Lionel's answer actually, because you mentioned price, you said, there's going to be an increase in the price. We're going to have to put the prices higher. Lionel is saying that actually people are willing to pay this higher price.
Yeah, but yes, they're willing, and we have to see the proportion. Because if I look France, for example, this year, more than 40% of the population cannot go on vacation. Before the crisis, it was 30-35%, depending on the year. We are up to 40%. So I could understand that we have part of our business of tourism who is able to pay a higher price because they want to have a less impact in carbon impact. But please be careful not to create and to have only a luxury tourism. And the price factor, we currently see that, for example, airlines, hotels are increasing pricing because the capacity is reduced. So we have a discussion, and we are all saying about the carbon footprint and the evolution in terms of environment. But clearly, the evolution of the price with the capacity, of course, this is always linked, could make in the quick future a barrier, and we will create a social evolution, a social issue, because you cannot let more than 50% of the population not be able to take vacation.
Yeah, just a higher price. Sorry, higher price doesn't mean higher margin or higher profit. You must be very transparent with the price, and you can explain, for example, when you go to Huttopia, 10 euro are for the environment, or 10 euro for everybody can go to holidays, or there are so many things to promote inside the price.
So you're saying price and awareness. So if I'm aware of what I'm buying, I'll be definitely more, and of the purpose, I'll be definitely more inclined. I heard a voice. Was it you, Al? Or was it Bob? Bob, I was actually going to bring you in precisely, perfectly. So please.
So two things. Number one, I was doing my research for this presentation. There's a Cornell University study where they looked at hotels that were LEED certified and compared them to non-LEED certified properties, and they were achieving roughly a 5-6% premium in pricing. So, there was some indirect evidence that people will pay that price premium if they can get that sustainable experience. The other thing I wanted to mention is, again, our clients are mostly private investors, and this private public cooperation that occurs. We do a lot of work with the National Park Service here in the United States. And what they do is they own all the real estate and land in the parks, but they'll lease it out to concessionaires at a favorable rental rate that will allow the operator to charge lower prices to make it open for the public. So just a way that the community, the government in this case, wants to have parks available for the community and the citizens at large. And what they do is they work with the private developers who are coming in to manage the concessions, the hotels, the gas stations, the gift shops, but they give them rental rates that allow them to achieve a reasonable profit, a fair profit, but still charge lower rates.
Well, thank you for that. Hal, Vogel Capital is going to give a bigger attention to projects that have, let's say, a very determined, as Jeremy was saying, with a better impact on communities in terms of inclusion and definitely creating a positive impact with also, I believe, with labor and workforce, maybe involving the communities to be a greater active part of the destination, for example. Would you actually look at that? Or would you stick more to, you say, the traditional analysis?
I would go for the more traditional analysis because these industries, hotels, airlines, cruise ships, all have significant problems in the financial area. One thing that we had not discussed so far, and it's important for the business model, is when will and how large will the business traveler come back? Business travel is the major component of margins, and the profit margins are very high for business travel. Leisure travelers are coming back gradually. The business traveler is the key for conventions, for extra spending, and we really don't know how soon they're going to come back. There are indications that it will be late 22, maybe 2023, and if that happens, it's all very good for profit margins and for financing projects. But that's one key element that we really don't know about at this point in time.
Well, thank you all. Actually, I'm personally a great advocate of MICE and business tourism as being, we're all here as business tourists at the end of the day. And we are probably the ones that are most available to test, and I don't mean diagnostic test, I mean to test, to really be, okay, well, how are we going to do things? We're the ones who are going to advance. We're going to be available to sort of be in the front line, the forefront of all the changes that are happening. So definitely we're all wishing for all of this to come back. And so we really hope that there's going to be a public-private collaboration stronger in this direction, definitely. This is very important. But you just basically said, let's stick to the traditional models. Financials are still very, very important. Companies are really struggling at the moment. So Júan, I saw you nodding. Do you also agree with Hal? So basically a new business model, we're not really ready for that until we restructure finance?
Probably not. Yeah, I do agree with him. And talking about business travelers and the MICE sector, look at this panel. More than half of the people in this panel is joining us online. So we have to bear in mind that we're in a new era of home working, and people attending webinars and hybrid events, as painful as they are. And we need to adapt to that. Are we ready? Only time will tell. But it is true that when looking at air travel data, we are seeing a very slow recovery. And all the reactivation that we've seen in the past few months has been led, of course, at the beginning by tourists that were visiting friends and relatives, and purely leisure travelers. But the business is coming very, very slow. We saw interesting movements in the US market before the summer, during the summer, and now, although now they're kind of like suffering a little bit with the Delta variant. But it is true that it's going to take ages, and we don't know if we will ever recover those levels of business travelers.
Well, that's definitely, I cannot end on these terms. That we need a little bit of a positive push here. So allow me, and thank you very much for allowing me a little bit of extra time, because allow me to basically sum it up and finish with Jeremy, who definitely probably seems to be in the best position to give us a positive yet strong message in this situation. From what I'm understanding, we're basically saying financials, very important. So shifting to a new business model for the travel industry. Let's recover first, and let's see how we can move around. On the other hand, we're saying we cannot lose this opportunity of COVID, because this is really the time when we need to rethink. We're observing elements of humanity being incredibly important, whether it's creating an impact on nature, whether it's creating an impact in communities, whether it's, and we're also saying there are things we cannot do without. So it's this balance probably between numbers and human side, or what is it? Jeremy, just to finalize this conversation with you, we're obviously going to not have a definite answer for the revision of the business model, even though we laid some some seeds there. So how would you say we should be ideally heading to?
Yeah, thanks for giving me the chance to close and maybe just inject a little optimism. And listen, I'm not here in the clouds pretending that the financials aren't important or that the traditional model is just going to go poof and go away. I mean, of course, that's unrealistic. But I do see evidence, perhaps not Hal's business, but a significant increase in requirements from investors around ESG reporting, around looking for really different outcomes, and particularly looking, and this is a new requirement that's coming out for the Dow 500. I just read in the Wall Street Journal around what stakeholder engagement really looks like. So the G part of ESG governance, and that means having a different mindset around which stakeholders are at the table and who we're ultimately deriving value for. So perhaps that's the end result that we can look at in thinking about a model. And who the return on investment actually needs to be for. We might think more broadly about who those stakeholders are, which puts us in a mindset of collaboration, understanding how to derive value for different audiences, and understanding where these key drivers might be coming from. And if we push too hard on some of those drivers and we don't allow ourselves to create value for communities, for consumers, and avoid some of the real societal challenges that are hanging above this business model and frankly threatening the future of this industry, then I think we will miss the opportunity. The flip side, the positive, is to do that collaboratively and find ways to derive value for different stakeholders across the chain. I think we have learned as an industry to be even more collaborative, even within COVID, to create economies of scale, to find opportunities to survive and be resilient. And for me, this is the future, thinking about ways that we encourage different perspectives and different aspects of our value chain to derive value from the sector that we all love. So.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. And let's do. I would like to launch a proposal to all of us. Let's meet again next year, and let's see how far we are in this new travel model revision, business travel model revision. So thank you very, very much. I'm sorry, I'm not going to have a lot of space for questions to the audience. Otherwise, the man is not going to come just with the 5 minutes. He's going to come with a shotgun. So let us finish here. The conversation was absolutely amazing. Thank you very much for having shared your precious vision and valuable time with us.